Let's go.
Welcome to Citizens. We got a special guest today, Oliver Walker Jones. 3 names, like a serial killer.
Thanks for having me.
You're not, I don't think. We'll see.
Not yet.
Live from Santa Cruz. How's the weather today? It should be fine right now, right?
It's pretty good. This time of year, it's usually pretty good. It's actually foggy today, but we try to get through the June gloom and the May gray, but here we are in October and it's still happening.
It's a little counterintuitive being in California, Central California, I guess. Technically, it's northern, but you're right at the cusp, and middle of spring, late spring, early summer, and you're like, oh, why is it gray?
There's a myth that every British person I know goes once in their life on a driving holiday through California. Every British person I know owns a sweater that they bought in San Francisco because they thought it was going to be hot and beautiful, and they turn up there and it's freezing. Everybody's got one.
Yeah, I used to go to Fort Bragg up in Mendocino a lot, and the fog would get so bad that their credit card machines wouldn't work. So they were still, this is like 10 years ago maybe, they still use those old school credit card machines where you had to put it on the thing and then slide it across the whatever the fuck that was, the graphite paper. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But we're not here to talk about the weather or necessarily about California. Let's talk about you for a moment. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from the UK, a town called Portsmouth, which is a historic naval town. So Henry VIII sailed his ships out of there, and my dad was associated with the Navy, so we were down there, and I spent most of my life there. I spent a few years in Munich, Germany, and I'm now out in California.
What brought you to the United States?
So I was in aerospace in the UK. I was working at Rolls-Royce, building the jet engines that power all the planes that we go on, like the Dreamliners and the A350s. And I loved working in aviation. I really liked all the technology, but I wanted to work in a company that was going to change the world more quickly. And I got a call from a company called Lilium that were based in Germany. And Lilium was four young founders starting up a company that was designed to develop an electric air taxi. So I went out to Germany. I worked there for a while, and the technology was great. But the company hasn't survived. But somewhere along the way, I got in touch with Joe Ben, who's the founder of Joby Aviation, which is the preeminent company in this sector. And he said, do you want to come work here? And so I said, yeah, absolutely. Best company in the sector, best boss in the world. And so here I am, moved me and the family out to California, and we're having a ball.
Yeah, good. This is something that when I mention it to people, because I have friends in the aerospace industry, when I mention it to people, they have no idea that this is the case. But Rolls-Royce still supplies a bulk of the aircraft engines that we use. And for private aircraft, frequently they lease the engine to the guy. You don't own the engines on your own aircraft a lot of the times. Why is that? What's that about? I'm just curious, because I've had conversations with people about this. Some of my friends are brokers, and they told me that. I'm like, well, what the hell? So I'm sure there's a very simple explanation for that.
It gets down to the economics. So there's a development cost associated with an engine, right? So if you're the engine manufacturer, it costs you $1 billion, maybe $2 billion to develop an engine. And that's very expensive to do. You need to find a way to recoup the cost. It's also expensive for people to buy the engines. If they're buying the plane, they want to buy an engine as well. That's typically prohibitively expensive for people. And so what you do is you lease something. It's powered by the hour is how it's sold. So you basically pay a maintenance fee or a membership fee, even a subscription, to know that you will always have an engine that's on. So no matter whether it's the one that you actually have all the time or yours has gone in for service, there'll always be power for you. So it kind of works both ways. It's good for the people that own the PJs. It's good for the people who maintain the engines because they see better revenue flow and they see it later in the life of the engine. It's a way for them to recoup the cost, basically. The truth of the matter is hardly anybody's making money out of jet engines.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a super lucrative business.
Well, you make money out of the maintenance.
The maintenance, sure, yeah. I mean, that makes a lot more sense to me. So what's your background in educationally? You said you were in aerospace before. Did you go to engineering school or did you do something else?
I have to admit that I'm not an engineer, but I've spent long enough around them that I feel like I deserve a degree. But I actually did a poli-sci major at Cambridge.
Oh boy.
I went out and I was a lobbyist for a while. I worked for the Conservative Party in the UK, ran a couple of election campaigns, decided that that was fun, but there's no money in British politics, so it wasn't really a living. I ended up being a lobbyist. I worked at Walmart for a while in the UK, and then crossed over into Rolls-Royce, and I haven't looked back from aerospace, been aerospace for 10 years or so now.
Mm. Um, and what is it that you do exactly in the aerospace industry if you're not an engineer? I'm sure there's.
So
Yeah.
I tell the story, right?
Mm.
So what we are developing, the electric air taxi that we're developing, is an amazing piece of technology, but it requires a huge amount of belief from the world to succeed. We need investors, we need regulators, we need Joe Public to support us. We need people eventually to buy tickets. We need people to come work at these companies. And so what everyone looks at, they look at the Jetsons, they look at the Fifth Element, they're like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not real. And so I've spent the last 7, 8 years of my life telling the story to the world of what this technology is and what it means. So I kind of think I'm in the business of trying to persuade people that this is a great idea, it's one they want to welcome. I've seen these companies go from Series B, kind of valuations in the hundreds, 200 million, raising small amounts of money, teams of 50, 70 people, to where we are today. Joby, where I work now, is a listed company. We're on the New York Stock Exchange with market cap around the $14 billion mark. We employ more than 2,000 people. Like, we've brought this industry to life, and we're basically at the horizon. For years and years, we've been looking at how do we get this thing certified? How do we create the environment that can allow us to be successful? And the end is kind of in sight.
Mm. So this is one of the anybody that's been I've mentioned this before a number of times on this and other shows. Anybody who's gone to business school will remember the anecdote of the railroads because it's kind of a classic example of how to fuck up a business by not understanding what business you're actually in. Because we like to um, we say that we like to look at things at on multiple levels. So a 30,000 foot view, not to use an aerospace reference, but a 30,000 foot view versus the granular level. Nobody failed more at that than the railroads in America. So they thought they were in the railroad business. And as
Yeah.
such, when new emerging technologies started to come out, new modalities of transportation, they actively lobbied to try to shut them down instead of using the vast resources that they had to buy the patents to lock themselves into those things, right? For example, railroads for, let's say, 75 years were the primary mode of transporting goods and people, aside
Yeah.
from personally owned horses and stuff like that. And then automobiles come along, and very shortly after the first series of automobiles, trucks that can transport things came along. By the 1920s, we're starting to see trucks, at least from town to town, carry stuff. And the railroads actively lobbied against this. They lobbied against public funding for roads. They lobbied against all sorts of stuff. They spent a lot of money actually trying to stop any kind of new modality of transportation happening. And why is the question? I mean, looking back, if you go to business school, they'll tell you, like, why the fuck did you even think about doing that? Why didn't you invest in that and own it? Same thing happened when the airlines came around. They didn't spend as much time going after the airlines, obviously, because by then they were in such a weakened position. But you can look back in time and see if the railroad companies, Union Pacific, had invested in automobile manufacturing, there's a chance that either, like, Ford would have still been Ford, but GM may have never existed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Bill Knutson probably would have worked for Union Pacific's car division instead of for GM, and then for the military, and then in creating aircraft and stuff. And then by that time, the airline industry would have been dominated by that company that had pioneered in railroad and then pioneered in trucking and now pioneering in airlines and then so on and so forth. And then now you see, it comes in waves. The granular level we're back to now, which is kind of decentralization to some degree, although it's kind of a faux decentralization like Uber or Lyft or something like that, where it's still a corporation making most of the money, but individuals are able to service the accounts and stuff like that. Even down to a lower level with the airlines, you can do the same thing, right? You can get a PJ, private pilot. It is a bad idea to spend most of your time in a business, especially in a time of emerging technology, thinking about what once was or what now is. You need to be thinking about what's coming, right? If you really want to create something, and that's what you guys are doing. To be honest, until I spoke to Michael, I think it was earlier this year, I'd never even heard of Joby.
Hmm.
So this idea of automated people movers is not new. I just got back from Disney actually. There's a lot of automated people movers there.
Oh yeah,
You see
yeah.
it in Atlanta and a lot of the big airports, right? Most of the larger airports have some form of automated people mover now, and we think of that as a conveyor belt basically, or a train or something like that. Now it's going to be an aircraft. Tell me about what Joby is.
So I just throw back to Disney for a second. I think I find it kind of inspirational because Walt Disney was very, very into transportation, right? He
Mm,
designed Disney World to be a kind of platform or example to the rest of the world of how you can build a community. And there's a
mm,
town there as well. And he
yeah.
was very into, it was America's first monorail, right? Was
Hmm.
installed in Disney World, and he taught a lot about transportation. The People Mover was kind of just designed to do that. So, and the irony here is that there was a helicopter airline that serviced Disneyland
Mm,
in LA, right, using helicopters. And so we've a little bit like supersonic. We made technological progress. We decided that flying vertically was a really good thing, and then we stopped again, and we kind of took a step back. And so, I kind of feel like we've dipped our toe in the water. We have to come back and have another go. There's a reason why helicopters didn't work out for Disney was really around safety and noise
mm,
and a little bit of the economics. And we've solved all of these problems with electric. So the aircraft that we're developing is fully electric. So it has 4 battery packs on the aircraft, has 6 electric motors, and it will do several things for us that will change the way that we think about vertical travel. First, it makes it incredibly quiet. So it's literally 100 times quieter than a helicopter, which means that we're going to be able to land this thing in the towns and cities and communities where people actually want to be. Today you can get a helicopter, and there's some places you can land, but there aren't as many as you want because people don't want them landing next to their house because they're real noisy.
mm,
So, to put that into context, if you're 50, 100 meters away from our aircraft and it's taking off, you can continue having a normal level conversation with someone and you don't notice that the aircraft's taking off. And when it's flying over your head at 1,000 feet, you don't hear it at all. So it's fundamentally different. Also means it's considerably safer. So we're able, because the electric propulsion is there, you can create redundancy that you just don't have in a mechanical system that has gearboxes and single points of failure. We take that away and we can protect you. So it's also considerably safer. And then it's also more economic because you have much less to maintain. So you don't have all those moving parts that need maintenance. You also don't have the fuel, the expensive fuel that's required for it. You have electricity. And if you're able to utilize the aircraft a lot more, many more hours a day, then you can bring the ticket price down. So
mm.
for all of those reasons, we think we can bring this and make it part of people's everyday life. So we don't want this to be a kind of every now and again you get on one just on a special occasion. We want it to be an everyday thing. We're going to start with a pilot on board, so we will have a pilot there, and that's really about fitting into today's regulation, and it's about demonstrating to people that it's safe. I often think of my own mum. I'm like, can I persuade her to get in this aircraft? Probably. Can I persuade her to get in it without a pilot? Probably not. We'll get there. And we have all the tools and the technology to be autonomous. We haven't done it yet.
Well,
So
yeah. Luckily, there's the car version is becoming more popularized.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
just with you in the vehicle in the front seat of your Tesla, but also Waymo with they use, I think they mostly use Jaguars, or maybe entirely use Jaguars, which they're the only
yeah.
ones doing that anymore. But yeah, it's interesting that it's kind of getting, we're going in steps. I don't know that look, it's just different, I guess, scales. You know what I mean? So it reminds me. This whole thing kind of reminds me of a larger version, uh, uh, or not a larger version, but kind of a continuation of some of the other things that have happened, like this big examples of big progress when it comes to, I guess, efficiency, if you want to call it that. Because, like, I think of, you mentioned Disney. Disney kind of used the old textile and steel mill models from the Rust Belt in America and then the South in America,
Mm,
where it's an entire town, right? The company store is
yeah.
where you get most of your stuff. And to be honest, that was kind of predatory because they were they would pay you sometimes in company store. Like if you got PTO, instead of getting time off, you got credit at the company store, which you had to buy shit from them, which is kind of fucked up. But yeah, it's a little town, a small town, and it is engineered specifically to move in a specific way. In Disney, it's kind of a circle, but yeah, it's like engineered to move in kind of a specific way depending on how the construction is, and it reminds me a lot of some of the other big examples. I mentioned Bill Knudsen before. He was instrumental in developing the assembly line in America in a real way for GM, for Ford, and then GM, and then so much so that FDR commissioned him as a lieutenant general in the Army to oversee the production of our aircraft for World War II. It's like, hey, we're not getting bombers made. You're in charge now. And he just made him a general. And then McDonald's. You see, if you haven't seen the movie with Michael Keaton, it's pretty interesting to see how they took a really good idea. So the first guys, I mean, it was, again, super predatory, but the first guys that actually started the company did away with all of the trash, or I'm sorry, all of the dishes. You don't have to do anything anymore. Everything's disposable. And he was like, this is a really good idea. And then you see them, there's a scene in the movie where they kind of work it out, where they have all the elements there on the ground, and he has people moving around assembling stuff until they get it right, until they really finalize the assembly part of it. And, you know, you have to have a good marriage between the engineering crowd, which is doing all this stuff, which is easy to me to explain now after the fact. But when you're trying to actually introduce the idea to people, that's quite a bit more difficult. You know what I mean? To explain to somebody that you can fly through the air without a pilot is not something that most people are willing to accept right now. But it is the biggest point of failure in any aircraft is the human.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you talk about safety failures and accidents, it's like 90 something percent is human error. So that's the piece you want to take. Exactly the same with cars, right? That's what you want to take out if you can. And you know, we will get there. We acquired a company called X-Wing recently, that have been taking an aircraft around. They fly a Cessna Caravans, kind of a mid-sized 10, 12 seat aircraft. And they fly it we've been working with the DoD, or the DOW, I suppose, to fly it around and demonstrate what this could mean in different locations for defense applications. Also works for cargo civilian application. But just recently, we took part in the Raffle Pack exercise, which is a big Pacific theater exercise. And you know, our team were controlling the aircraft, or monitoring the aircraft from the ground in Guam, and the aircraft was flying between airports in Hawaii. So you know, this aircraft is taking off, flying, landing with basically no input from anybody on the ground except for people monitoring it thousands of miles away from where the person is who's monitoring it. And that's today, right? And so the journey for us to get from there to actually having passengers and doing that is going to be a really, you know, I mean, it'll be regulatory complex, and probably in terms of public acceptance, it'll be complex, but there's no reason why we can't do it. And like you said, you know, Waymo, Zoox, all those companies, Cruise a little bit, are going to have laid the groundwork for us to do that.
I'm very curious about all this. One of the issues with any kind of automation is computational power, like compute. Is there all the elements you can observe, for example, like obviously direction, Coriolis, barometric pressure, wind, all these factors that can be an issue. Thermal pockets, thermogenics, stuff like that in the air. Because I've jumped out of airplanes. I know a lot about coasting down and then hitting a thermal pocket and dropping 50 feet in 1 second. And I'm like, fuck, because I know I'm a big dude. I'm going to hit the ground hard. There's a lot of stuff that goes involved there. Computational power has to be pretty high and zero fail for the most part. All that. Is there I'm very curious about the development of this. Is there a singularity computationally that you feel like you guys can reach that will allow the aircraft to be more or less perfect compared to a human operator? Because it's, you know, I mean, that's the argument that a lot of Air Force pilots or Navy pilots will make, is that you can't build the brain of this thing enough to have the instincts that a human pilot would have. And, you know, that might be true at Mach 4. I'm not sure if it's true at like 120 knots,
Yeah.
in a taxi. But
Yeah.
at Mach 4, maybe it's true for now. I mean, the human brain works what at 1 petaflop. We're getting closer, but we're not there yet. But what is there a level of compute that you guys are going to reach that you feel like is going to just pretty much erase that human necessity?
Yeah, we think we're pretty much there actually in terms of what the aircraft's already capable of. I mean, it's worth saying that this isn't like we go down the road and we turn it on in 2030. The aircraft's already very autonomous within itself, right? So if you consider that we have six propellers, we don't have a pilot with six like individual thrust levers going, I'm going to turn this one up and that one
Mm,
down a little bit. That's all happening already.
yeah.
So the ability of the aircraft to manage itself in wind and pressure and air pockets and thermals, so that's already built into the system, is already operating. So one of the things, if you've sat in a helicopter and watched someone try and fly one, is you basically fight the helicopter the whole time,
Mm,
right? You have to balance and rebalance, and you're constantly rebalancing the controls because it kind of wants to pull itself in different directions. Our aircraft will manage, if you are flying along and you take your hands off the control, there are no feet controls. You take your hands off the controls, the aircraft will just continue doing what it was doing before. You don't have to put anything in. Similarly, you can stop the aircraft, dead stop in midair, hovering, and let go of everything, and it will just continue to fly itself. So it's already making micro
mm,
corrections. It's turning up the speed of the RPM of the propellers and changing them. It's feathering the propeller blades as it needs to, and it's managing all of that already. So a vast majority of it is already happening in terms of the control of the aircraft. So then, really, what you're looking at is just decision making and
mm.
journey profiles, and we're confident that we're basically there already, and we're demonstrating it with the X-wing aircraft. The thing to say is, this is kind of obvious when you think about it, is that there's many more things on the ground that you can bump into than there are in the air. So
Mm,
it's in some respects easier. So there's no kid that runs out in front of you when you're on when you're at 10,000 feet.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. So you can literally set trim on a rotary wing aircraft, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
which is not something that's something that we're just now seeing in some of the more advanced helicopters.
Hmm.
That has
Hmm.
not been the case for most. You've always been able to do it to some degree on fixed wing aircraft because it's flying through the air, and I can
Yep.
just set the dial and it'll travel in the same direction for as long as it goes.
Yeah.
But that's not been the case with fixed wing or rotary wing very long, even at
That's
the
exactly.
highest level, and you guys are doing that already.
Yeah, and it's instantaneous basically. It's like small milliseconds reaction time to move whatever piece wants to be moved in order to
Mhm.
maintain safe and level flight.
Right, and then there's the other part of it is another level or potential for a failure point in human error, which is air traffic control. Those guys do really. I mean, I don't know how their brains work, to be honest. To be able to almost just with a dot on a screen be able to kind of figure
Yeah.
stuff out. They're very good at their jobs. The problem is we don't create enough of them. As we're seeing, New Jersey is like at 1/3 staffing for ATC right now.
Yep.
There's been other places that have had some trouble as well. But to that point, one of the things ATC does that's most important, deconflicting around airports is really important. But one of the second thing they do, I think that's the second most important thing they do, is to help the aircraft navigate around weather, right?
Right.
And to create the most efficient route, because that's what, at the end of the day, it's a consumer product, and people are not going to be too happy if they're getting 45 minutes added to every flight. And then connectors get missed and all this other shit happens. So a lot of micro adjustments are made every single day for the 13,000 or so aircraft that travel through this country.
Yeah.
And, the more of those that can be eliminated as a factor for a failure point, right, is I think better. Obviously, I don't know that that's really an objectionable statement.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the opportunity here is how, well, to start with, when we fly through the aircraft, a lot of the airspace, in fact, the majority of the airspace is not controlled, or it has very low levels of control,
Mm,
right? It's when you start trying to fly across the runway at LAX that it starts, you start really noticing the challenge. And so a lot of what we want to do, we'll be doing just by visual flight rules. So we'll be up there, looking, and we'll file a flight plan and we'll have a look and we'll look out the window and deconflict ourselves, and maybe air traffic control help us a bit, but we can fly without the need to get in the way of controllers pretty often. When we do need to work with air traffic control now, they are going to, we're going to be able to communicate with them just like every other aircraft is, and they're going to deconflict us. And we're going to be at a scale that doesn't really have a dent on what it is they're trying to do. But what we need to solve for is what happens in 2035 when we're here and we're scaled, and suddenly, those thousands of flights that happen in the US every day, we've doubled that number because we're actually up there flying thousands of flights
Mm,
a day just ourselves. And at that point, we have to think differently about how that gets managed. And so, a lot of the conversations happening in the government at the moment about renewing the air traffic control system, introducing smart control and AI,
mm,
I think is going to go a long way to making sure that we're future ready. Because America needs to win at this. And if they want to win at it, it is all about making sure that the ground is prepared for scale of operation. America already has way, way more general aviation airports than any other country in the
mm,
world. So aviation's kind of in our blood. We
mm,
fly way more than anybody else does domestically in the world. But the system's a breaking point. So,
mm.
we have to kind of lay the groundwork to be ready for that next level of scale. And to be honest, the current government's leaning in super hard on making this real. Right, we've been really impressed, I think, with what we've seen. The President Trump's recent executive order, the EIPP, which is all about drone dominance, basically,
Mm.
of how do we make sure that it's the US that gets this technology, that scales it first, that has the technology companies that can deliver it, and we're on a good trajectory.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've heard from the administration as well. Um, and it's the good news is America more so than any other country. I've been to a lot of countries. More so than any other country uses three dimensional space really well for travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean sometimes it gets a little fuck crazy, like Atlanta with all the bypasses. It's just crazy over there. But we do know how to build in three dimensional space pretty well here, so I'm not terribly concerned about being able to solve for that. But it is an issue, obviously.
Yeah,
Uh,
but we don't use it. This is the great thing. It's like we use 3D transport kind of well, and if you include Elon's tunnels, I suppose it's
mm,
kind of almost like fourth D.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
we don't. What we really want to change as a company is using the third dimension has to become daily.
Yeah.
So there's no reason. There's no reason why you can't live 100 miles away from where you work, or 50 miles
Mm,
away from where you work. Everything we do right now is about kind of creating super dense urban core. And we need to kind of change the way we think about that. And if we can get it to a price point that it just feels like getting in an Uber, which is what we want to get to, there's no reason why we can't like dramatically change it. But it's a huge mindset shift.
mm,
If I told you, you're gonna have a vertiport in your town, and every morning you're going to get up and you're going to like ride your bike half a mile, or you're going to walk half a mile, you're going to get in an Uber half a mile, and we're partnered with Uber, by the way, so we can kind of connect these journeys. So
mm,
and then you're going to jump on this aircraft and it's going to fly you downtown, you're going to go to work. Like you'd think that was alien,
mm.
but it's nowhere near as alien as as it should be. There's something called Marchetti's constant, which is I don't know which century he was alive in, but it was a while ago. It basically posited that humans, will only spend an hour a day commuting to whatever it is, their daily activity, life, work, whatever it is. They don't want to spend more than an hour commuting. And so every time you introduce a new form of transport, so you go from like a horse to a car to a bus to a train to whatever, to an eVTOL air taxi aircraft. Every time you introduce that, people don't suddenly reduce the commute time necessarily. They don't think about it as a way to reduce their commute time. What they think about it is like, I can still spend an hour a day, but now I can live way further out. So we can rethink where we live, right? We can rethink the way that we design cities, where headquarters are based, where we put medical facilities, how we do research. Any of these things can change because we can pick stuff up and move it around. There's a city in California called California Forever,
Mm.
which is being developed, right? And it's kind of sort of almost out in the sticks, but it's within flying distance to San Francisco and the whole Bay Area. And that, I think, is one of those like forward-looking developments that says there's no reason why we can't do this out here with a little bit more space, helps with house prices, helps with people just having a little bit more space to live. You're closer to nature, closer to Tahoe. And we can fundamentally change the way people live and think if we can get back to that scale point of this being something that is, thousands, tens of thousands of flights a day.
Yeah, I guess that's my next question is, what is Joby's vision for this, like for its offering? Or I guess let me rephrase that. Which customer segment, commuters, business travelers, etc., are you prioritizing first? or is it high net worth to get the investment first and then you move backwards? Sometimes that's a necessity as well. But what's your priority right now?
Yeah, so we'll take anybody, but I think the way that we're setting up the business, at least in the US, is that we intend to do two things. One is we're not only developing and designing the aircraft and building it, but we want to operate it. So we want to have a Joby service that you can get up on an app and you can book a journey with us, with 5, 10 minutes notice or an hour's notice, and you can travel with us. So we want it to kind of be a daily reality. We also think that we'll be selling aircraft, to corporates or to individuals so they can use it. So there's kind of two different paths to commercialization in the civilian sector. And then in terms of the people that we expect to be jumping on the aircraft, we tend to kind of get back to the Elon Musk Tesla vision of, you start with a roadster that's kind of relatively expensive and some people have it, and you use the proceeds from that to drive into something that is more widely achievable because the price comes down because the volume scale goes up, and that continues on the way down. So you can reasonably expect that we might start with something that feels a little bit like Uber Black pricing, but we want to get down to Uber X pricing. That means that in those initial years, sure, it's probably going to be people who are using it slightly less frequently, people that may be traveling business class today if they were jumping on a plane and going a little bit further. But it's not ultra rich mega millionaires, right?
Mm.
It's kind of designed to be accessible even on day one, and then it only gets better.
Mm.
That's the kind of important thing for us.
So a goal would be, I mean, look, some cities have done this, some big cities, and let's be frank, United States is a big country.
Yeah.
I know Europeans look at us and the amount of cars that are in this country and think that we're crazy, but yeah, we're like you're a state to us. Like each one of your countries is basically a state where it's a big ass place, and it's been we go through these I guess periods of adjustment where a lot of work moves into the city. And then right now we're in kind of a decentralized mode where people can work from anywhere in a lot of ways. And maybe you've got to be in the office 3 days a week instead of five, or two instead of five, which is different. You know what I mean? And you're going to adjust your plans. In big cities, they already have a lot of companies in the Bay Area, for example, will subsidize your BART transport, so they don't have to buy parking in the city, which is way more expensive.
Yeah.
It's like $30 a week to use BART maybe, and for each person, and then for a parking space can be $500 a month. You know what I mean, which is quite a bit more. And I mean, the people are already doing this to some degree. They're already using this strategy in a lot of ways. And I think of the environmental impact, and not the way that crazy people talk about it, but the idea of having green belts around our cities and having people live outside the green belts around more plants, around the food that you actually grow, right? And have more accessibility to it instead of having to, the city is more like Coruscant and Star Wars, where people just come there to work and then go back to their homes outside of the city afterwards,
Oh yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
living in the city. Some people like living in the city, and that's fine. Do what you want. This is
Yeah.
America, but I think most people don't. I think most people live in cities as a necessity.
Yeah.
And if you look back into the city life from the middle part of the 20th century, when it was from the, I guess, let's say the 40s until the 80s, maybe the 90s, when it was really popular, the cities looked a lot different back then. They were neighborhoods. The boroughs of New York were quite a bit different back then than they are now. It was like, this neighborhood has this thing, this neighborhood has this thing, and now it's just a mess. So I think giving people more, one, decentralizing things, and then two, giving people more options is going to produce the best possible outcome, both for our cities and the hinterland. And as a result, we've got these green belts around our cities now. I've been saying this forever. We need two things desperately right now. We need a shitload of nuclear reactors immediately. Like yesterday, we need probably 30 to 50 new nuclear reactors within the next 3 years. That's not going to happen, but at least within the next 10 would be nice. And we need to have more farms closer to where people actually live to eliminate this food desert issue, and price and all that stuff that comes as a result of that. And the strain it puts on our energy industry, having to move everything everywhere all the time, right? If we can move the individual back and forth, that's quite a bit fucking cheaper, is it not?
Yeah, right. And it's a way better quality of life.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. Like, you don't want to, no one wants to sit in a car, right? It's just
Mm.
not fun. And we said, well, if we do, we don't want to be driving it, but we
Mm.
don't want to sit in a car. I mean, I really enjoy driving cars and trucks, but I wish I could do it for fun, not sit on the 101 in a traffic jam. That's
Okay,
the
yeah.
that's the difference, right? And so if I can fly and I get where I'm going in a quarter of the time, a sixth of the time, an eighth of the time, then that's going to make a big difference to my life. And if I get to be with my kids and I'm out and there's somewhere green and I'm not worried about living in a tarmac city, then I don't know. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, there's like just having there's a lot of these studies coming out now because of the way that the way we've evolved to interact with nature has been very disrupted,
Mhm.
and it's affected everything. The vast majority of people's hormones are wildly out of balance now, and you can see that shit. Let's
Mhm.
just be real about that. But there are like every now and again somebody will write a paper discovering something. Oh, it's extraordinary that cilantro pulls heavy metals out of your body. Of course it does. Like, of course, the way we interact with the environment around us is important because that's what we did for the vast majority of our evolution. Um, Okra pulls plastics out of your body. It binds to plastics. Okra, which is a slimy mess and it's disgusting. Even I grew up in the South and they love it there, but you eat it and it pulls stuff out of your body. If you have a fern in your house, it pulls like 75% of the pollutants out of the room, out of the air in that room specifically. So,
Oh,
what do you think is going to happen when you live around more green shit versus more concrete? You're going to get wildly more healthy. You're going to like all the rubber and plastics and metal that are in the air in a city. And no matter what city you're in, they're all over the place, and there's no way to escape it. Just spending less time there and more time closer to a natural environment is going to drastically improve your personal health. All these weird comorbidities that we have now
yeah.
will the inflammation that the last two or three generations have had that is completely unnecessary tends to go away. And the only like there's a lot of different ways to solve it. One is to I guess go full Kaczynski and blow up all the machines. You know, I don't. That's an option. Nobody's giving up their fucking iPhones. That's just not happening,
All
right?
right. Right.
So the other option is to find a way to mitigate how much time we're spending around these things, and this seems like a really good way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we also we think very deeply about exhaust emissions too, right? Like one of the worst things you can have is what you're breathing in and around cities
Mm,
and the particles. And so if we can remove a portion of cars from the road, because people are flying and they're
mm,
flying with something that doesn't generate any emissions apart from the electricity generation, but you're going to make that clean anyway. Then we can make the city a healthier place. But when you are there, like you're breathing in the city is going to be healthier. We also see, I mean, it's worth saying Joban Bevitt, who founded this business, that his vision extends beyond this one aircraft that we're developing. And we're developing a hybrid version of the aircraft that will take you a considerably longer distance and at least gets rid of some of the emissions. We're also looking at hydrogen propulsion. So we've flown aircraft that can travel, just exactly the same aircraft they have today. We flew at 560 miles on a hydrogen tank, liquid hydrogen. And there's really interesting applications there when you look at like what happens if you start to move trans-American, transcontinental travel away from jet fuel and you start
mm,
using something like hydrogen. It's a ways down the road, but you start taking away the contrails, so the things that you see behind the aircraft. And people disagree about the impact of that, but the one thing we know it definitely does is generate some form of pollutant that is causing some sort of reaction in the environment.
mm.
And so anything we can do that kind of gets us back to using cleaner materials means we can have machines
Yeah,
that we can coexist with and not lose. What
yeah,
what
yeah,
we don't want to do is just be like, you can't fly. The worst thing is like the Flugskum concept in Europe, where they're like, just don't fly, just
yeah,
don't fly,
yeah,
don't
yeah.
travel. Like we can't do that, right? It's a relatively European way of
Mm,
doing things. Like we don't like it, we can't do it.
mm,
Whereas the American version is like, well, let's innovate and work out how we can still do it.
yeah,
And that's really what we're interested in. It's like making sure that that doesn't become a reality, but also that we are able to do even more.
yeah. I mean, it's the, yeah, the European model is a bit silly sometimes, but and maybe we're a bit too on the cowboy side, but whatever, you know.
I don't
Um,
know. Like I worked in Germany for
mm,
3 years, and I worked at a very high tech startup that was trying to do exactly the same thing,
mm,
right? Electric air taxis. And I every day that I turned up at work, I was amazed at the strength of emotion within the commentariat that wanted it to fail. They're like, we can't invest in this. We mustn't invest in this because it will fail. And when it fails, it will embarrass us. And we can't let that happen. And meant that there were research papers that took us down. There were news articles that tried to pull apart. There were professors. There was a professor at the Technical University of Munich, which is one of the best engineering universities there is, that has been behind so many amazing innovations. They're like, it doesn't work because of this. I published a paper, and this won't work, and this won't work, and this won't work. And you're like, if you turn half of your effort to trying to make it work, you would have an economy, an innovation, and investment that would change the world. Germany was the company that delivered us like Bosch and Audi and
Mm,
Mercedes-Benz and diesel engines. Like all of these amazing innovations, but all 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And
mm.
suddenly, the only place that it seems viable to bring this kind of technology and have the belief to support it is in the US and maybe China, but mainly in the US. And so that was mind blowing for me, like dealing with that system. And I find it almost sad, particularly in the UK, actually, that there's nowhere near as much support for people just having a go at something that's really hard. And if you can get the government behind it, you get the investors behind it, and you can get the general population behind it, then it's win-win-win.
Yeah, there does seem to be kind of a misinformed risk aversion there. So over enough time, jet fuel, whatever, jet fuel, car fuel, and don't forget about uh, nautical shipping. Nautical shipping produces
Yeah.
the vast majority of the pollutants actually in the air. But carbon to me is not a problem because the Earth will, over the course of about 20 years, create more trees to absorb carbon. I'm not worried about that. But the heavy metals that it puts in the air are fucked. I mean, that's the problem that nobody ever talks about. They talk about heavy metals, but never in the environmental sense. You know what I mean? Only in the individual sense. But it's way more of an environmental factor than carbon will ever be. We just track this carbon number for some reason, even though at the time of the dinosaurs, it was 3 times higher than it is right now. When there were no human beings around, so I don't know what happened. Maybe that was something. Maybe that was us. Who knows? But yeah, it's like we do like to fight our way through problems. We work the problem is a phrase we use here a lot.
Yeah.
How can you solve this in a way that's good for everybody? And then realize that we are working with our environment, not for it. I think is probably a good way to think about that. And not every company, as you said, Germany during that time period when you were there, were in the process of closing 5 of their 6 nuclear plants.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
closed I think they just passed a bill to close even more of their coal plants. It's like, dude, you're not ready to do that yet. What are you thinking? And now they're buying a bunch of Russian energy, which
Right.
if they hadn't closed those nuclear plants, probably would not have been spending are sending are getting rather 20 to 25% of their energy from Russia, and Russia probably doesn't have the resources to really do what they did a couple of years ago. Let's be frank about that. Not that I'm blaming Germany. It was just stupid, and now they're paying for it. That's not the way to go about business, man. You can't. Energy security is national security. We've got a big problem with it here right now. We are not expanding our energy offerings nearly enough. Energy prices have gone up anywhere from 20 to 40% since 2021, depending on where you live in the country. And we are in an energy race with China right now. China is going to steal your technology as soon as they can, if they haven't already, at an 80% solution, and then try to put a paint job on it and pretend like they created it. It'll suck, and people will probably not use it, or they'll die using it or whatever because they're idiots. But they do that all the time. They steal our stuff at about an 80% solution, try to
Yeah, I mean,
polish it up a little bit.
you can Google the pictures and find the thing that looks 80% like our
Yeah,
aircraft. Or
yeah. It's common and literally in every tech sector. If it's from software, like a Palantir gets ripped off by them all the time. They've got shitty software. Their AI software is terrible. But when it comes to energy, they're outperforming us 3-1 right now.
Yeah.
And they're also investing in it more than us 3-1, which is a problem. Luckily, the Trump administration says they're going to do something about this. But this is like, I wonder, in your career before as a lobbyist, is that part of your job right now as a marketing guy for a company that depends on that energy to some degree to be like, hey, we got to fucking catch up here, bud. I know a lot of my buddies in the industry, in the tech industry, are constantly telling people in the admin, we need more, more, more.
Yeah, I mean, I would say honestly, no, not yet, because we got so many other problems that we need to fix first. But we have a common ally in, you said you have Michael as a guest.
Mm,
Michael Thompson's on the Joby board. He's also on the Oklo board, right?
mm,
So he's talking frequently about small modular reactors
mm.
and the opportunity to make America energy secure again. And I think or indeed for the first time. I think there are enough people that if I work this out that it's something that needs to get done. The draw that we have on the network realistically is not huge, right? It's the same. We talk a little bit about lithium-ion batteries and
Mm.
the how you get the materials that you need for the batteries, and the same argument here is like we are not yet at Tesla scale in
Mm.
terms of the number of vehicles that we're building. We're on track to build like last year we built parts equivalent for 12 aircraft, and Tesla's building tens of thousands of cars. So we're not quite there yet, but in the future we will be. And so yeah, when we talk about it, but it's not so high on our
Okay.
agenda yet.
Well, Tesla produced 1.8 million last year, I think, um, which is that's a lot. I mean, that they're growing exponentially right now, despite a lot of the heat that they're taking, which is really interesting. Speaking of them and other companies,
Yeah,
not that Tesla's involved in this necessarily, but how does Joby differentiate itself from the other eVTOL, explain what that is first, and
yeah.
how does it differentiate itself? Like, there's a lot of factors. Safety is the most obvious one because it's a new technology, but also you mentioned it with Disney. Noise is a big thing. Range and any kind of electric vehicles are always going to be a big thing, and then the downstream partnerships, which you mentioned with Uber, are going to
Yeah.
be a big thing as well. So how are you guys differentiating yourself from the rest of the marketplace?
So, eVTOL, EVTOL, or however you want to say it, is electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So basically, aircraft are able to take off and land like a helicopter
Mm,
vertically, but
mm.
then fly forwards like an airplane has a wing as well,
Like a
and the
Harrier,
propeller.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
So
an air type.
it's you're I mean right off the bat, eVTOLs are solving a three-dimensional problem, which is the runway.
Yeah,
Instead of
exactly.
having a
Right.
one runway that I need taxiing for, that I need takeoff usually mile plus for, right?
Yep.
If not, the larger aircraft's obviously quite a bit longer than that.
Yep.
You defeat that problem immediately just with the technology, so you can just go straight up.
That's exactly it. So tiny, you need something that's the size of the aircraft to land on,
Mm,
basically. And that means we can have 10, 100 across the city, and you can get really, really close, kind of like a metro station, really
mm,
close to where you want to be. And that again reduces the time that you'd be traveling. So
mm,
that's kind of that's what an eVTOL electric air taxi is. The thing that we do. I mean, the thing that Joby does, I mean, we've perfected, we think, the aircraft. So you have to choose always balance between all the different things that it's capable of. But we have payload, we have speed, we have range. And so it's four passengers and a pilot. There's a range of up to 100 miles, a speed of up to 200 miles per hour, but an acoustic profile that's super, super quiet. And getting all those things in balance is a really hard thing to do. And we think we have got the best possible balance you can. And that's the result of 16 years of work. So, we're pretty close to generating revenue now, but this company's been around. Joe Byrne has been working on it for 16 years. So one of the core differentiators, apart from the fact that we think we've got great tech, is we have been at it for longer than anybody else has
mm,
been, pretty much. And so we've done more than 40,000 miles of flight testing. We've flown the aircraft in all sorts of places in all different countries around the world. We've flown it through the full transition from vertical to horizontal flight, hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. We've had five, six, seven different pilots. Like we are just that much further ahead because we started early. We're fully vertically integrated. That gives us a whole bunch of speed as well. So, we design, manufacture everything, pretty much everything in-house. Mainly because it didn't exist when we started, but also because we see huge benefit in speed. If you're able to, you have one engineer who's like, I don't know, it's not flying exactly how it is. Let's change this bit. You walk, 10 meters down the road and you talk to Ben and he changes the thing. And then you talk to James over there and he prints the thing and then you put it in the aircraft and that took you a few hours instead of weeks relying on suppliers. So the vertical integration, the speed at which we work, the amount of time we've been doing it, all big differentiators. And that kind of then plays into who is working with us. So,
mm,
we attracted several years back now, 5 years back, we attracted Toyota as a partner, and they've become our largest external investor. So, the world's largest auto manufacturer, the one that's probably most famous globally for the quality and reliability of their product, they are helping us identify how we build this aircraft, how we do it most effectively. And, to what you said right at the very beginning of like railroad companies being fought and people, car companies not quite, auto companies not quite understanding how they should work together.
Mm.
This is an auto company that understands what the future looks like. And they're working with us to help bring that to life. So we have Toyota as an investor. Delta and Uber are two of our kind of key top of the funnel partners. So we strategic partnership, both investors in Joby. So we'll be integrated into a Delta booking flow. So you land on your Delta flight at JFK, and it's seamless journey to pick up a Joby and then fly into Manhattan, for example. Same with Uber. When you land in Manhattan, you want to go the last 10 blocks. We got you covered there as well. Really, really amazing partners. And then we kind of repeat that around the world. So Virgin Atlantic, if you know them from the UK, partners of ours. ANA is Japan's largest airline as well. A whole bunch of other people on the real estate side. So what we've felt is a kind of coming together of the best possible companies to support us, and people who have bought into the vision long term, people who are going to hold the shares for a long time, people who are going to help us make it real. These are big, well-known companies who are kind of getting behind us, and that's really, the magic that I feel after sitting in this office for 7 years and talking about it and writing about it. I'm like, hell, you know what? This is it's coming to life. It's actually coming to life, and we have the best partners in the world helping us to deliver it. We have a view to doing it. We plan to be starting taking commercial passengers next year.
Oh wow. And where are you starting? Like from where to where?
So in the US, the core markets we identified two Delta hubs, New York and LA. And we can expect airport routes are going to likely be early opportunities. So, LAX down into downtown LA, JFK, Newark, and if you've come in on a private jet from, say, Teterboro down into Manhattan as well, but also around those cities. We haven't announced the specific locations for many of these yet, but we've got them all kind of lined up and backed up there. We also just recently acquired Blade. Lots of listeners may know Blade as a helicopter service provider in New York City, particularly. Also have operations in Monaco. They're flying people today. So, they're flying around the New York area. We were at the Ryder Cup recently out Bethpage. We flew something like 2,500 people across the 3 days back and forth from Manhattan. So we're kind of already there. We're already moving people around in those cities, and we see that as a great opportunity. And there was a moment at the end of the Ryder Cup where Uber. You wanted an SUV, it was going to be like $1,100 to take you from Bethpage down into Manhattan. Today, that's basically the same price as a helicopter. We are flying people from Newark into JFK for less than $200. Sorry, Newark into Manhattan for less than $200 now, on a daily basis, basically in New York City. So New York and LA likely to be first markets. We think Florida is going to be great. I'm sure Texas, I'm sure the Bay Area is going to be great for us too. We're also looking overseas. So, we have partnerships out in Dubai. We're the exclusive provider in Dubai. We think that's going to be a good kind of opportunity for early operations. They're pretty leaned in. We think Korea and Japan are going to be great. We're actually flying right now at the Osaka World Expo. We've been flying for a couple of weeks, with 10,000 people a day queuing up to watch us fly, just to kind of be part of the story is pretty epic. So, loads and loads of places. The question is how we scale up quickly enough to match the demand.
Yeah, well, I mean, the more normal folk are excited about it, the more investors are excited about it typically,
Yeah.
which is always nice. South Korea is great too. They've in the late 90s, when the United States was going through a dot-com boom and just making money off of Beanie Babies and fiction, South Korea was building broadband fiber internet infrastructure so in 2000 or 2003 the average broadband data speed in the home of a South Korean person was 50 megabits per second. They didn't hear dial-up. There was no AOL, right? Which was or DSL, which is wildly popular back then, which was somewhere between like 2.4 and 3.4 on average, I think. I've got a bit of a background in tech, and I remember tracking on this stuff. And I was in computer college actually for computer network security in 2003 through 2005, right before I joined the Army. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, why does this tiny little place, which is not tiny, but compared to us, it's tiny, why do they have so much better stuff than we do? And a big part of it was the same thing that Tesla's taken advantage of, that a lot of companies have over the years, which is public-private partnerships.
Mhm.
People bitch about the government being involved in stuff. They don't bitch about the interstate highway system or the railroads. You know what I mean? Being able to bring them stuff
Yeah.
cheaper.
Yep.
That's just what it takes sometimes. We all invest in something, and the person with the idea makes a bit more than everybody else on it. That's kind of called capitalism, in my opinion. You know what I mean? The guy that
Yeah.
had the idea should profit more than anybody else. But yeah, I think there's going to be. I think there's some changes on the horizon right now. We'll see how long beyond the Trump administration it lasts because he's just got so much gravity. He's able to get shit done sometimes. But I'm hoping that it continues with the energy scalability and with the investment in tech. I know they're batting around the idea of a sovereign wealth fund that might be a contributor to some of these private companies, like they are in Norway, for example. Norway uses its oil dividends to invest in companies, and they've got a $1.7 trillion surplus whenever they want to dip into it because of their sovereign wealth fund. It's the largest one in the world in fucking Norway, and they make
Yeah.
like $5 a year over there. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure we can figure this out. But a big part of it is making the American public shareholders
Yeah.
and stockholders in the companies that we're investing in that also benefit them in their day-to-day lives. I think that's something that's really smart, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, we see the opportunity there to make we in our headiest moments, we're like, we have the potential to be the next Boeing, right?
Mm.
Something that's like a bastion for American manufacturing globally because of the scope of products. We're working on defense products, we're on civilian products, working on all sorts of different propulsion. Like this could be amazing. We're manufacturing it in America, right? So we have a facility in California. We're also opening something up in Dayton, Ohio, which, by the way, is that's where the Wright brothers did it.
Yeah,
The America's first aircraft manufacturing facility was in Dayton, Ohio, and that's where we're going back to. And so we want to kind of build that from the ground up. We want it to be great for all of America. And hey, if we're doing operations in lots of different cities, it should feel like something that can be owned.
yeah. Mm.
And if we have the pride to be able to take the technology, yeah, I think people often look at drones, like non-passenger carrying drones, as something that we lost to China,
Mm.
in terms of market share and technology development. And so we have the opportunity to kind of step in and make this ours and make it American. And so if we can do that and we can scale it in America and we can build it in America and we can design it and we can own it, then it should be an amazing thing.
Yeah. I What's the plan right now with regard to to get there's one thing to have public sentiment leading to private investment and government regulatory investment as well. But what's the plan right now for you guys to communicate the capabilities, the safety, certification milestones, etc., to skeptical consumers and regulators as well, right? Because that's going to be a big part of the process.
I think the only we talk about it till we're blue in the face, and no one really cares because they don't listen until they see it, right? So I think the absolutely critical thing is we have to get out there and demonstrate the technology. People have to see it, they have to hear it, they have to touch it. We have a mock-up aircraft, like a full-size scale model that we let people sit in, and we took it to the Ryder Cup. We put it in Grand Central Station. We're taking it to the Formula One in Austin in a week or two's
Oh
time.
yeah.
And that's what drives people. They as soon as they see it and they touch it, they feel like, oh, okay, this is real. We were at the California International Air Show last week. Sadly, the Blue Angels were supposed to be there. They couldn't be there because of the shutdown. So we ended up being I think, the highlight of the show. 50,000 people who live in and around where we live, seeing it for the first time. It did its thing in the air. People get like, at those moments, they're like, people suddenly are like, oh, shit, this is real, right? It's exactly the same as Waymo did with
Mm.
the robo taxis, right? You don't believe it until you see it, but when you see it, it just makes sense immediately.
Yeah.
Um, that's really, I think, the only answer. I mean, about 2 years ago, we took the aircraft to the downtown Manhattan helipad. That's on the
Mm.
east side, just by Wall Street, and we flew out of there in front of the mayor and a whole bunch of other people. And that for me was like, this is the moment where it felt like shit got real because you see it flying in an urban environment. And the more that we can do that and show people it in the real places you expect to see it, that's going to make a huge difference. So, we'll at some point we'll put a passenger on board. They'll make a whole bunch of content. Hopefully they'll lead people along the way. There'll be people that don't believe, that's fine. But there will be enough of them that will advocate for this confident. I talk to we have these amazing amazing pilots, right? The people, the test pilots that fly this thing every day, they have the gumption to get in an aircraft that nobody's ever got in before and fly this thing. And they're all ex-military pilots. They've
Mm.
been test pilots. They've flown hundreds of types of aircraft. One of our guys helped design the Harrier jump jet controls. So he's like doing something that nobody's ever really done before. And they get out the aircraft, they're like, it is sweet, right? You feel a little bit of vibration here and there, but like that magic, I'll be honest to you, I drive a Mustang, but occasionally I get in other people's electric cars. And when you do, and you feel that like seat of your pants acceleration,
Mm.
they're like, imagine that, but in an aircraft, and like it's apparently it's a really great experience. I'm looking forward to my first go.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, look, there's only two ways to do it. One is an American muscle car. That's one. And the other one is people don't understand physics for some reason with the electric car. They think that it was a thing for a while to be like, oh, you're driving an electric car. You're kind of a pussy, dude. It's like, okay, you don't understand the conservation of energy principle, right? Because every one of those junctions, from the piston to the flywheel to the drivetrain to the tires or the wheels, you're losing energy at each one of those things. With an electric engine and a battery on the tire on the wheel, you're not losing any energy. That's why you can go 0 to 60 in 1.3 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that
Which is
car
amazing.
will always be faster off the line than any combustion engine you can make, unless it's one of those crazy ones with like a jet engine on the side of it or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the problem we have, like the counter problem is we turn up at an air show and people like loud things. I
Mm.
mean, I like combustion engine cars because they sound good. You go to an air show
Yeah.
and you fly this amazing aircraft and nobody notices because they
Yeah.
can't hear. Yeah, it's not an F-35,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. You know what you need to do? You need to remember Dukes of Hazzard. You got to put Dixie on there. Press the horn. And it's just like that would be hilarious. And another thing I was just thinking about would be a good idea. So, I'm sure you know Jared Isaacman.
Mm,
He's a good friend of ours. We fly. Me and my lady were up there just flying jets with him a couple weeks ago. Getting some of the former military aircraft pilots like Dale Stark and other people like that who are now kind of social media influencer type people. Wiz Buckley would be another one. He was a Top Gun instructor, to come down and do an event where they don't have to fly it, but just like be in the aircraft while it's flying around and talk about it. I think would be very helpful for this, to
Oh
let the
yeah,
general public know a bit more
yeah,
about, like, not only is it safe, but this thing is cool as shit.
yeah. I think we're gonna have no end of people that want to have a go, hopefully.
Oh
But I
yeah.
think getting the people who you kind of trust in an aircraft already is going to be the magic for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's third party validation is a big part of marketing, as you know. You're a marketer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big thing. I think. What are your guys' plans for down here at Coda? What are you going to be doing exactly? Can I get in one of those things?
So we're not flying. That's the
Mm.
important. We're bringing the full scale aircraft. It's going to be in the fan zone. It's something like 400,000 people turn up at the F1 for Austin, and so we want as many people as possible to come and see it. So people can jump in it. They can sit in the mock-up on the ground. They can kind of touch and feel it,
Mm.
take their picture with it, understand what it is going to be like to be inside, and that's as good as we're going to get this time around. But
Okay.
hopefully in the future we'll be able to come and fly too.
Yeah.
I think for me at least, like the audience that comes to Formula One is super aligned with what we do. People are interested in innovation,
Mm.
technology, engineering, moving, fast things.
Yeah. It's like the
Uh,
old World's Fair back in the day. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly that. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited, and would love to see as many people want to come sit in it they can.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you guys ever want to just land in our parking lot here, that's fine with us too. My buddy lands his helicopter back there all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah. See,
Uh,
see you in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, yeah, for real. You could do that anytime you want. So speaking of that, tell everybody. We got to get out of here, but tell everybody where they can find you at Coda in case they're in Austin for the Formula. I mean, like you said, the 500,000 people are going to be here
Yep.
for the event, and then also tell them where they can find more information about Joby, how they can interact with things, and all that.
Yeah, so if you're coming to Kota, you can find us in the main fan zone. We're going to be next door to Cadillac,
Oh, sweet.
and Rouse, I think, or some kind of pasta sauce company. Then I think if you want to find out more about what we do, the best place to look is either on X or at Joby Aviation, or get on YouTube again, Joby Aviation. It's you got to see it to believe it. So
Mm.
find somewhere where there's some film. We're on Instagram, Joby Aviation again. You can find us on the New York Stock Exchange, hashtag JOBY for Joby. Website's jobyaviation.com, but we're making a new one, so maybe leave it a few weeks.
All right. Well, thanks for coming today. This is all very fascinating to me. I think this is one of those technologies that's going to change our country. I don't know if other countries will be keen to adopt it. Maybe once they see the success here, but I think
Yeah.
it's probably more relevant here than any place other than maybe China, Russia, Brazil. These large, land body countries. It makes sense. India, maybe. Although,
Anywhere where there's traffic,
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
which is both places.
But yeah, I think it's a game changer insofar as being able to marry the hinterland with the urban environment to some degree in a way that like allows people to get back into nature just on the day-to-day basis. I think it's a great thing. I appreciate you coming today. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for coming. We'll look forward to next time. We'll do it in the back of the air taxi.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll do that in a couple of weeks if you want. It doesn't matter to me.
You have to promise not to jump out. That's
I can't make any promises, but I won't jump out without a parachute. So if you don't see me in a parachute, I'm definitely not jumping out. Yeah, thanks for coming today. This has been super fun. Oliver Walker Jones, Joby Aviation, go check it out. Thank you for coming, and thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.